You look at every single team who's won the World Cups every 4 years, the 2 years prior to wins before they've won it, that's when they've really started clicking and starting to hum.
The incident, the penalty, the try at the end of that second test, having something like that as well, which will be talked about forever in Lions tours, but it'll be brought up again in 12 years, Tim. That's, you can't buy that either, can you?
Someone like a Taniela Tupou is getting paid $1.2 million in Australia. I think he's going to France for probably less than half that.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
It is always with great pleasure that we welcome back a great friend of the show. He's given us so much time over the years. Tim Horan, double World Cup winner for Australia, 80 tests. He's been virtually on tour with the Lions over the last 6 weeks as well. Welcome back, mate.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks for having us back. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind tour for 5.5, 6 weeks for the Lions. We started a long time ago in Perth, and there was a lot of anticipation about what the British and Irish Lions would bring to our shores, and a little bit of talk at the start of the competition about would the Lions keep touring to Australia every 12 years, because they had a test match, as you know, against Argentina in Dublin on that week prior to them coming out to Australia, and obviously some big scores in those games leading up to the first couple of test matches. But I think that happens in every tour, New Zealand and also in South Africa as well. But I think that the test series we've just seen just indicates what the Lions will be here in 12 years' time.
Stephen Jones, our good old mate who writes in the UK as well, we know, suggesting in a column overnight that they need to rejig this schedule, take out New Zealand in 2029, start touring France, maybe a match in Italy, go to the Americas in 2033 and park us back in 2000, whenever it is at the end of that. A couple of things about that. Look, I think that we can all see how important a Lions tour now is, not just in terms of the rugby matches, but just economically more than anything else, isn't it? I mean, RA get out of the black because of this, just in terms of the positive publicity about the game, all of that kind of stuff. Look, it's not just a breath of fresh air. It's almost like the travelling circus comes to town every 4 years, or 4 years. It's going to be, for us, 12 years for you guys. It's something that, is just so intrinsically rugby, and I believe its importance is now even more elevated.
Yeah, I think what they'll do, Martin, I think, in talking to the CEO of the Lions, they'll look at different tours prior to going to the main tour. So whether before you go to New Zealand and play for 6 weeks, or before you go to South Africa and play for 6 weeks, you might lose one game, a touring game, and what they might do, they might play France in a test match or 2 test matches before they go away to play New Zealand. So that's what they're looking at, like they did with Argentina one test. They did that, I think, 4 years ago when they played a game in before New Zealand. I think they played, might have been someone in Hong Kong, the Barbarians in Hong Kong. So they're looking to expand, but I'm pretty sure they will keep every 4 years Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. But on the way to those tours, right, I think they will integrate a test or maybe 2 tests on the way.
Just in terms of, well, first let's get it out of the way. How good were they, this Lions side? I mean, up until that third test, they were talking about amongst themselves in the British press about this was one of the greatest ever. We've had a lot of conversations about this week. Tim, I'm not old enough to remember 71 and 74, but when you look at those results of those tours, the players involved, you read the interviews. I've been lucky to interview some of those players. Those Lions teams achieved things which were unheard of in those days, right? I kind of put them at the top of the pedestal before looking at every other Lions side.
Yeah, it's interesting because the 2013 Lions side that came to Australia 12 years ago, I thought was a very good Lions side. And even I actually thought probably 2001 was one of the best Lions teams going around, but they didn't win the series. The Wallabies ended up winning that second test match and the third test. So that had Martin Johnson. It's one of his biggest regrets in his career, Martin Johnson, of losing that test series. So, it was a solid Lions team. I wouldn't say it was the best Lions team going, but I think right across the board, they had a really good balanced team, and every single player. There was actually really no huge standouts in the team. Tyke Bird, of course, was wonderful, and Finn Russell did his job, but no one really stood up, and that's probably the measure of how the side was brought together by Andy Farrell. So it was a great tournament. We loved it. Certainly financially, for, as you mentioned, for Rugby Australia, it's been really important. But also it's the fans. 40,000 British and Irish Lions fans come to Australia. They go up to Uluru, they go to Great Barrier Reef, they go to Cairns, they snorkel, they come to Brisbane, the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. So economically for Australia has been great, but also, as you mentioned, for Rugby Australia to get them out of the black hole they were in, and then they've got 2 more years to go through this Rugby World Cup, and we'll pick up probably another 100-odd mil. So that goes back to community game, but also it's got to stay in the game for Australian rugby and have a future fund. So, yes, it's important for us, the tour, but I think also we needed it for the game of rugby so that people now care about the game. You can see how much people care after the loss in the second test match and that potential penalty or not a penalty. And people care about the gold jersey again.
So important, and that's something you don't put a price on. And it's almost like that thing that happened, well, the incident, the penalty, the try at the end of that second test. Having something like that as well, which will be talked about forever in Lions Tours, but it'll be brought up again in 12 years, Tim. That's, you can't buy that either, can you?
No, that's right. And, I think that when I looked at it, I was in commentary and looked at it, I thought, gee, it could have gone both ways. I actually thought personally it was probably 50-50, depending on which side you barracked for or were cheering for. And if we flipped it around and the Wallabies were the other end and they were trying to attack. But then those clean-outs, yes, it's part of the law, but those clean-outs happen 15, 20 times in a game. And do we want another 15, 20 penalties in the game? No, I don't, certainly as a commentator. I don't think the fans do either. So those things happen. Yes, it was 30 seconds to go when the Lions hit the front, but that's just sport, that's just rugby. And, I just don't think we need to pull the game up again for little instances like that all right out through the game, because that's what would have happened. If that was a penalty, every referee would have gone, okay, well, if I see that ever again, 20 times through the game, that's going to be a penalty. Yeah,
and this is the big frustration for all of us who love rugby, is watching it with somebody who doesn't watch it.
We want the game to flow too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In terms of where Australia are at, I think there's a lot of positivity around it. But go right back to that first test. Was the team desperately underprepared for that first test?
They might have been underprepared in certain areas, but I think Joe Smith's a very clever coach, and they played Fiji 2 weeks. It would have been good to play another test match for those players, because a lot of those players hadn't played for a long period of time because of Super Rugby when that finished, and it was only the Brumbies that went through to the semi-final. So it would have been nice to probably, before the first test, have a test 3 weeks out, another one 2 weeks out, and have those 2 games. Maybe you play Fiji again. But, I think probably we didn't have the size in that first test match, and we didn't have Will Skelton, we didn't have Rob Valetini. So those ball carriers was really only Harry Wilson and then Angus Bell who came off the bench. So I think that first 25 minutes in Brisbane, probably that 25 minutes in Brisbane and the last 6 minutes of the first half in Melbourne when the Lions scored 2 tries, that was the 2 deciding factors in the series.
It's amazing, isn't it? We had John Eales on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and before that he was talking about that. He was talking about the first, sort of 10 minutes of no mistakes and keeping that tight just before halftime, just after halftime. And we saw in that first test, just after halftime, they scored, I think, just before halftime. And as you say, just before halftime. And poor old Tom Liner, because it was him that dropped it, knocked it on, and that was almost a 12-point swing at that stage. Yeah. That, this is what a series does, though, doesn't it? Because it's not a one-off test match like a World Cup. This is, you're able to look at it over 3 or 4 games and go, okay, isolate, separate different instances and different things that happen, and you can actually pinpoint those.
And I think that's what, and it won't happen all the time, but I know the All Blacks are going to South Africa next year playing a 3-test match series, and it builds up that anticipation, especially if it's 1-1 going into the 3rd test match. And I think that we need to probably get back to that in time every 2 or 3 years for the Bledisloe Cup, and maybe the touring teams that come out here, whether it's England or Ireland. I know next year we're playing a couple of teams just once, but one-off test matches are good. But I think for the big matches and big occasions, I think the 3 test match series over, in 3 different cities in Australia or in New Zealand, people can get together and they can go and build that anticipation. So, but it's trying to fit all that into this pretty compacted sort of year now that all these players have, and they're playing a lot of games.
Getting those 2 big boys back, what was so good to watch from this side of the ditch is just simply that, huge men with purpose and intent and some rage in there. That's what, rugby hasn't really changed from that, has it? The biggest guys make the biggest impact. Well,
I think you've seen that from the Springboks the last 4 to 5 years when they won in 2019, then they backed it up. It was all about size, and the 7-1 split on the bench. That's because it's about size and about bending the defensive line and getting over the gain line to give your back some quick ball. And it's a power game. And, yes, there's room for the Cheslin Colbys and Max Jorgensen and those type of players. But I think up front now, it's a size game. How do you get, because the defence is so strong right across the board, teams are kicking more, but they're also trying to bend that line. So, yeah, Will Skelton was great. And Tamiela Tupou, I thought, was outstanding the time that he was on the field. He played long minutes in that third test match. And we've hardly seen this year, of course, for the Waratahs, he hasn't really performed to his expectation or the fans' expectation. And that was a big challenge for him before he goes to France to play a couple of seasons over there now. So it was a good way for Taniela to show that he's still got it.
Obviously, the scrapping of the Giteau rule now means that players can be selected from over there. I guess now you get into that rock and roll as to whether the clubs are going to let them go and how much time do you actually get with them before a game to prepare and things. So it creates another set of problems, I suppose. But at the same time, was this inevitable from Australian rugby that you just had to do it?
Yeah, I don't think it's changed really much. They're saying that, because even whilst Joe Smith's been in charge, he's always said, I will pick anyone from overseas if they're good enough, playing good footy, and if it's not 50-50 between a player who's on Australian soil. So if there's two hookers and one's playing really good footy on Australian soil and it's 50-50 and someone's playing overseas, well, he's going to pick the Aussie player who stayed here and committed to Super Rugby. So that's not changed. It's just also the fans. If you're a fan watching a test match and you don't follow a lot of rugby, all you want to know is that the coach of the Wallabies has selected the best 15 available, and that's all you want. And now whether you pick 10 of those from playing footy over in France and a couple in Japan, I don't think it matters. But certainly you want to favour the players who have opted to stay in Australia and keep Super Rugby strong as well.
We have this argument here all the time as well in New Zealand, and half the argument has been that, look, that might work for others, it might work for South Africa, and it's worked very well for them, it might work for you guys, but it doesn't work for us. If we lose our control over that All Black jersey, well then, who is going to stay and play? Do we have the resources? Can you understand that point of view as well from this side?
Yeah, certainly, and we have the same thoughts as well. We want to make sure that Super Rugby's strong and you're staying in Australia. But certainly, the affordability of paying certain players, someone like a Taniela Tupou is getting paid. He's different. He's getting paid $1.2 million in Australia. I think he's going to France for probably less than half that. But normally it's the other way around. Normally players might be on $450,000, $500,000 here in Australia, and they get offers of $750,000 to $1 million over in Japan or France. So as a player, and you got to look after your family for a couple of years as well, because you retire, then you have to try and find a job somewhere else. And you got to try and put that money away, invest, etc. So I get there's 2 or 3 options there for players, but the gold jersey really means something to all these players. You look at Len Giteau and Joseph Suoli and what it means for them after the game, Taniela Tupou singing our national anthem in tears. So it means a lot. It's just sometimes there's doors open that players, one, financially, but two, also, they want to take their family away and experience something in the south of France or in Japan, and look at Richie Mo'unga and what he's done, and Sam Cane and all these different players who've gone over and experienced something. It doesn't have to be at the end of their career. It can be through the middle.
We'll talk about Richie because we've got some great news about that today in terms of New Zealand rugby as well. Just going back to the Wallabies, I know we've talked in the past and you were big on combinations. I mean, you had a fantastic midfield combination, but inside at the time as well, through both World Cups, fantastic 9s and 10s as well. Where are the Wallabies at with those positions at the moment? Let's start with 9 and 10. Where are you at the moment?
Yeah, we've got great depth in the 9 position, certainly. Nick White might have played his last professional game, or was supposed to be, but Jake Gordon looks like his hamstring's not that great to travel to South Africa, so whether he goes or not. Tate McDermott, outstanding. What a player he's been for the last couple of years. Played his best footy probably this year and also last year. So, and then you got Ryan Lonigan as well from the Brumbies, who hasn't had a chance to play for the Wallabies yet. So I think our 9s are pretty strong. 10's probably the area that we're just struggling to find, who can stand up and be there for the next 3 to 5 years. Noel Oseo looks like he won't play for the rest of the year with his neck injury, and Tom Liner I was talking to Tom Liner post the third test match in Sydney, and that's his fourth decent sort of head knock this year, concussion this year, semi-concussion. He had one against the Crusaders, just came off, I think, just before half-time, that quarter-final. So there's a bit of a worry there for Tom Liner moving forward. And, then we got Ben Donaldson as well. So we really haven't found who's going to be that 10, who's going to put the stake in the ground for the next 3 to 5 years. That's the challenge for us, so moving forward.
Do you think after watching what you saw over the 3 tests, I mean, just in terms of your positivity, happiness ladder for before the series started against the Lions and where you are now, has it jumped up a couple? And if so, where and why?
Yeah, I think when you look at this Wallaby team now, that yes, we've got some depth in most positions. But I think I'm just really pleased with the pride in the gold jersey, as I mentioned, and Aussie fans. Yes, there was a lot of red in the crowd, but there were so many Aussies there with gold jerseys on. And whenever you see the Wallabies play, you always get people turn up and support them. So whether that's corporately, whether that's people who follow other codes, and then they always watch the Wallabies. They might not necessarily tune in every single week on a Friday, Saturday night on Stan Sport to watch Super Rugby, but any time the Wallabies play, they're always there watching. So I think the Wallabies leading in, you're always 2 years out from a Rugby World Cup's really important, because that's when you're building your team, and that team's got to stay together for 2 years leading into the tournaments. You look at every single team who's won the World Cups every 4 years, the 2 years prior to before they've won it, that's when they've really started clicking and starting to hum, and their age is starting to get up around sort of 25, 26, 27, 28, and they become this experienced team that played together for a long period of time.
So 3 tests done with the Lions now, but that's got to be put to bed straight away, because it's off to Africa, as you say, and it's Ellis Park to start with, and there's no meaner place to go in world rugby than and try and upset the best team in the world at their place. So, how easy is it to go, okay, whatever we've learned on the Lions thing, okay, well, let's just got to be parked there now, because this is a completely different set of circumstances. And what do you expect from the Wallabies, not just in those 2 tests? It'd be fantastic if you snatch one in South Africa, but also now going into the Rugby Championship and 2 Bledisloe Cup tests against us, because you want that level to go up again, don't you?
You'd hope the level goes up, but I don't know how much fuel's left in the tank after those 3 test matches from the Wallabies. It just gets harder and harder. So hopefully it hasn't taken too much out. Hopefully they're building as a team, and their aggression, the way they play the game. So, I just really hope, especially the first match in Johannesburg, that the Wallabies could put in a performance that it just wasn't, not a fluke against the Lions, but fans want to see the gold jersey perform well again. If you get it done by 30 or 40 points, not that I think the Wallabies will, the fans go, oh, okay, well, that was, wasn't great for the Wallabies. So I think it's important that they continue this momentum and keep showing the Wallaby fans, but also show themselves that they're actually improving week in, week out.
How have your confidence levels increased or otherwise about the 2 Bledisloe Cup tests then?
Yeah, we just won one hand of the Bledisloe at Eden Park, and of course the games have changed this year. Eden Park is the first test match, and the second test match is in Perth. So I think the last 5 or 6 years might be been longer. The first test match has always been in Australia. Yeah. So, it's going to be difficult for us. Eden Park's, I'm not sure why. It's a hard place to play or a hard place to win, but it seems to be. But, I think the Wallabies, by the time they get to, if they're lucky with injuries, because we need our top 15 players on the field, if we're lucky with injuries, we'll certainly give the All Blacks a shake. And I think all Kiwi fans would like to see that as well. Imagine if the Wallabies could upset the All Blacks at Eden Park and go to Perth potentially to win the Bledisloe Cup. I think that's what we need to do. We need to win trophies, need to show the young fans that the Wallabies are on the way up.
2 quick questions here before you go. I mean, thank you so much for your time as always. When you're in the commentary box and Morg was going off about the whether it's a penalty or whether, you're very calm. Yeah. So is that are you aware of that at the time?
Yeah, it's funny as a commentator. I don't get too up or too down. I sort of tend to stay in the middle, and like Sean Maloney, wonderful play-by-play caller. Sean, as he's up, he's got his shoes off, he's dancing around. That's all part of the way that he can express his voice. Sean Maloney, great caller, one of the best I've been with. And Morgan Turanu, the same. We look at situations sometimes differently, and you need to have that in the commentary. And he was pretty animated when that should have been a penalty at the end of the game, he thought. I just sat back and I was just sort of watching it thinking, well, maybe that could have been 50-50. I actually thought the referee handled it pretty well, Piatti, and I thought he had a great game. But Morgs he was going hard. That you need that.
Of course.
You need that atmosphere
We love
in
it,
the
mate.
commentary
Of
box.
course,
It's
yeah.
good fun, and that's all part of it.
All right, we'll finish on Richie Mo'unga. Great news for New Zealand Rugby that he has signed again, and this means he's available for the All Blacks in about October next year. I think these are always fluid, Tim, in that, if the SOS call came through, he'd just come off a great season in Japan, he's fighting fit, the SOS call came through during the Rugby Championship next year, who knows? We had Todd Blackadder as coach in Japan on the program about 6 weeks ago, and Todd said that he thought he was playing better rugby than he was at the World Cup. He's saying, look, he's improved as a player. He said, don't just think that players come to Japan and they just park the suitcase under the bed and that's the end of it. He says he's a really smart guy. He wants to get better. He's got high standards. So just your thoughts on this. I think it feels like it's great news for New Zealand rugby.
Oh, certainly. Great news for New Zealand rugby. Terrible news for Australian rugby. But he's one of my favourite players, Richie Mo'unga, and what he did for the Crusaders over so many years. He was probably, I reckon him and Beauden Barrett kept Super Rugby alive for a couple of years because it was waning a little bit. I reckon those two players, the excitement that they put in to Super Rugby, especially when they came to Australia, like we have so many Kiwis, of course, live in Australia, they'd bring so many fans to the game just to watch those two players. And like Richie Mo'unga, what he does on the field, but also what he does off the field, you always see him, as even Bodie Barrett as well, and a lot of the Kiwi teams, when they come to Australia, they are around signing autographs, getting selfies with all the Kiwi fans, Aussie fans. So they put the time in. So, yes, we see them on the field, but what they do off the field is pretty impressive as for ambassadors for the game, not just in New Zealand, but also in Australia. So I think it's great for Richard Mo'unga. He knows what he's going to do in 18 months' time. And as you mentioned, if there's a few injuries and issues, I'm sure they'll slot him in a bit early if they need it.
New Zealand rugby gets stronger. Yes.
How good. How good. No, it's great. We love watching Richie and the Kiwis and the All Blacks, how well they did against the French team and got a scare in that first test match. But yeah, can't wait to see how you guys go against the Springboks and, of course, Argentina coming up in about 8-9 days' time for you guys as well. So it's going to be a great Rugby Championship, and hopefully we can be upwards and continue some momentum from the Lions series.
From this side of the Tasman, very genuinely, I hope you go hard against South Africa, man.
Hope we knock them around for you. And I don't think we'll bust them, but I think we can give them a good shot.
Always a pleasure, Tim. Thanks so much for your time, mate. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Martin. Good to chat, mate.
DSPN.